service, I was thinking about how that there would be over 2 billion people today worldwide who would be celebrating the very same thing that we are this morning. Some would be in church buildings and temples and chapels and all sorts of places. Some would be outside on beaches. Some would be in jungles. Some would be in fear for their life underground in secret places. But all over the globe, there is this singular, powerful truth that unites all of us. It is the hope of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Because in the raising of the dead of Jesus Christ, what we know and understand and believe to be true is that God conquers even death. And if God can conquer death and bring life from it, then what in this world is too strong for the arm of the Lord to conquer and overcome? And so this morning, as I was thinking about, the things, just the last few minutes of what I would want to share with you, one of the things from the very beginning that I want you to know is this. When we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ, we're not just celebrating history. Yes, it is an historical event. Yes, it did happen 2,000 plus years ago. But we are also celebrating the possibility of resurrection for people like you and me. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 talks about how Christ was just the beginning, the first fruits of the resurrection. The possibility now is open for people like you and me to experience the same thing. And I would imagine in a place like this morning that there are more than just a few of us who could use a resurrection or two. I would imagine in a place like this that there are some of you who would say, you know what, I would love to see my marriage resurrected. I bet there are a few of you here who would love to see your family resurrected. I bet there are some of you who would like to see your career resurrected, your reputation resurrected. There's a lot of places in our lives where we struggle and stumble and fall, where we look at and we think, is this it? Is this all there is? Do I got to just make it for the rest of the days of my life just like this? Or is there something else? Is there something better? Is there something different? Is there something more? Now, I would imagine this morning there are many people sitting in these seats right now and all over this world who could use the resurrection, who would want the resurrection. Until you understand there's one prerequisite for the resurrection to occur. You know what that is? Death. Before one is resurrected, one has to die. And I would imagine in the places where you are needing resurrection, that there are things in your life that are precluding the resurrection from happening. Things that you've been holding on to, things that you've been struggling with. In many ways, some of you know they're no good for you, but you've become used to them. They've become your companions. And even if you don't like it, it's not serving you well. And so the reason that resurrection doesn't happen more often than it does is because nobody likes to die. In fact, we resist and avoid it as much as is possible. But this morning what I want to say to you is that death is not the worst thing that can happen to you. The worst thing that can happen is to live a life with no purpose, no meaning, and no hope. And I want to say to you this morning, the story that I'm about to read with you is a story where God comes to people in the places of their deepest need, a place of great despair, a place where they had lost all hope. And He comes to them in an unlikely way, at an unlikely time, and gives them something that they need. And as I open those scriptures and I read them to you, I want you to think about your life, where you are, what you need, and what you would like God to do for you in this place. Now, Frank, if you can, I'm going to put a prayer that I want you to consider praying quietly, okay? If this is a reflection of how you feel, of what you want. The prayer simply says, Lord, open my eyes, restore my hope, forgive my doubt, renew my life. It's a simple prayer, okay? Now, as I pray, I want you to think about that, and I want you to invite God to do that today. And I believe you will be greatly surprised as we walk through the Scriptures what might happen as your heart begins to burn to the truth of the fact that the risen Christ is here with us today. And He's wanting to come in and make His home with us. He just needs for us to invite Him to come. So as I pray, consider that prayer and making it your own. I'm going to pray out loud. You pray quietly as I do that, okay? Let's pray. So, Father, that's my prayer. I pray that you would open my eyes, that you would restore my hope, that you would forgive my doubt, that you would renew my life. Because I'm in need of a resurrection today, too. There are places in my life that need your touch, personal touch. And I know that I'm not alone. And I thank you today that the resurrection isn't just a one-time event, that it has a possibility every day, all the time. And so as we gather in this place and open your word, we ask you to speak to us. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing and acceptable to you, my rock, my redeemer. In Christ I pray. So if you want, you can turn with me to Luke chapter 24. Luke 24. The story we're going to read is a story of two people who were followers of Jesus. And in the days leading up to where we find them on their journey, they are devastated. You see, because they had put all of their Easter eggs in one basket. They were banking on the fact that Jesus Christ, who had come, was the Messiah. He was the one who was going to deliver His people from the oppression of the Romans, who oversaw and who did great injustices to them. They lived enslaved to a group of people who were not nice. And they had hoped that Jesus was the next Moses. And so when He had come in towards the beginning of the week and they were celebrating Him on Palm Sunday, things looked radically different than just a few days later when they would see their friend, their Messiah, the one that they were counting on, bludgeoned and beaten, flesh torn, hanging from the cross of His own death. And when He gave up His spirit and they took Him away, they also took away these people's hope. Life had never been so dark and bleak. They were at the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. And some of us know what it's like to be in that place. No hope. This is where we find these two. We begin the story as they make their way from Jerusalem, where all the events of the last several days had taken place, to a little town called Emmaus. And it's a 7-mile journey. So they have a long walk home. Reads as follows, verse 13. That same day, 2 of Jesus' followers were walking to the village of Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem. Now as they walked along, they were talking about everything that had happened. And as they talked and discussed these things, Jesus Himself suddenly came and began walking with them. But God kept them from recognizing Him. Now I don't even know how to interpret that or what that means. All I know is that when He came alongside them, they didn't know it was Him. So get the picture. They are totally devastated. They're making a 7-mile walk away from hope. Jerusalem was the place of hope. That was where the coming king was coming to be enthroned. That was where they were placing all of their energies and their joys and their happiness. And they were dashed, so now they're leaving, dejected, and they're turning. And they're just talking with each other like, God, can you believe it? Can you believe that happened? And they're repeating the events of the week. And they are just heartbroken. And then as they're walking, all of a sudden this stranger comes alongside and he just sort of takes up with them and he's walking with them. Like, hey, what's up? What's going on? Now this would be weird, wouldn't it? You're like leaving Jerusalem, you're sad, you're talking with your companion, and up comes a stranger who wants in on your conversation. Okay? This
story continues. He asked him, "Hey, so what are you discussing so intently as you're walking along?" And they stopped short with sadness written across their faces. Then one of them, Cleopas, replies, "You have to be the only person in Jerusalem who hasn't heard about all the things that have been happening here over the last few days." And then Jesus asked, "What things?" That's kind of funny, right? I mean, isn't that funny? I mean, Jesus has just gone through this week, and he's been, he's had quite a week. And he's walking alongside, and they're like, you've got to be the only person in town who doesn't know what happened. He's like, "Well, what happened?" As if he doesn't know what happened. So he asked that question, and then they said, "The things that happened to Jesus, the man from Nazareth," they said, "he was a prophet who did powerful miracles, and he was a mighty teacher in the eyes of God and all the people. But our leading priests and other religious leaders handed him over to be condemned to death, and they crucified him. We had hoped that he was the Messiah who had come to rescue Israel. This all happened 3 days ago." Now I want you to, the thing that struck out to me as I was walking through this passage again this week is that verse, "We had hope." We had hope. There's a lot of things we had hoped, isn't it? We had really hoped that the marriage was going to work out. We had really hoped that we were going to be able to have that child. We had really hoped that our child was going to be able to overcome his addiction. We had really hoped that I would be able to hold on to my job. We had really hoped that we would be able to pay the bills. We had really hoped. Do you know what it's like to pray prayers and not have an answer? Of course you do. We all know what that's like. To search the skies and wonder where God is, and just feel nothing but remoteness and distance. To place all your hopes in something transpiring and getting almost sometimes the exact opposite. We had really hoped. I need you to understand that place, not for the sake of going to a place that's hard for you to live in, but for you to understand what it's like to be in their shoes. Because at this part of the story, they had really hoped for a different ending. And all they really got was darkness and death and despair. These people, they had no hope. And there may well be people in this room right now who are in a place of no hope. But I want you to stay on the journey, because what we understand from this road, this walk from Jerusalem to Emmaus, is that God comes to us in the places of our deepest grief, even if we don't recognize him right away. See, the miracle of God is right under their noses, but they don't see it. They're consumed with grief. They are turned inward. They cannot see the hope, but it's right there. It's not distant. It's right there. And so what I want to say to you is that sometimes in the place of what you had hoped for not coming true, sometimes what needs to happen is, rather than turn inward or to turn away from the possibility of God doing something great in this place, maybe what has to transpire is that you have to open up and invite God to meet you in the place that you are. Because you will discover as you do that he's a lot closer than you think. And that's what's going to happen here as they continue the journey. Listen to what they continue to say. Then someone, and they said, "We had hoped he was the Messiah who had come to rescue Israel. This all happened 3 days ago. Then some women from our group of his followers were at his tomb early this morning, and they came back with an amazing report. They said his body was missing and that they had seen angels who had told them, 'Jesus is alive.' Some of our men ran out to see, and sure enough, his body was gone, just as the women had said." Now this part doesn't make sense to me. Does it make sense to you if after losing all hope and in great despair, they had placed all of their little Easter eggs in one basket, and the basket was dropped and the eggs were broken, and they had totally given up hope? They're moving away from hope. They're leaving. They're going from Jerusalem to Emmaus. They're going back to their life before they knew Christ. But they had been given a report from other believers, people that they knew, that Jesus wasn't dead, that he was resurrected. There were eyewitnesses who were giving account. Now, what doesn't make sense to me is this. If there's any shred of hope, if there's any shred that what these people are saying is true, why wouldn't you stay in Jerusalem? That's where he is, right? That's where he was last spotted. Why would you not stay? Why would you go back? And here's what I want to say to you. Sometimes Jesus is right under our nose and we don't even see him. Because we're bent on moving in a direction away from hope. Sometimes we become so consumed that the miracle is right in front of us and we can't acknowledge it, much less embrace it. Friends of theirs, people they knew, told them differently, told them better. They gave them a spark of a possible hope. They couldn't hear it. They wouldn't hear it. And so they left. The story continues. Then Jesus said to them, "You foolish people, you find it so hard to believe all that the prophets wrote in the Scriptures. Wasn't it clearly predicted that the Messiah would have to suffer all these things before entering his glory?" Then Jesus took them through the writings of Moses and all the prophets, explaining from all the Scriptures the things concerning himself. He took them all the way back to Moses. All the way back to the earliest books of the Bible, where there was prophecy that was foretelling all of the things that were happening. He gave them a history lesson. He took them through the Scriptures. And he began to explain, here's all this stuff was told, but you were looking for someone else. You were looking for someone different. You expected me to ride in on a stallion with an army and to deliver you. The Scriptures never spoke of me in that way. So he's unpacking this and he's telling them, listen, A and B and C and D, all this stuff was told, but you wouldn't hear it. You wanted to recreate God in your own image, the way you wanted him to be. But that's not how it works. Just because you ask for A or B or C, it doesn't mean that God is required to give you everything you want. In fact, if He did, you'd be miserable. Because you change your mind so often that what you ask for today, you don't want tomorrow. So, A, B, C. He walks into the Scriptures all the way from Mo. He takes them through the prophets. And he leads them up to a place where suddenly this is starting to sink in. They're like, as they continue the journey, it says, by this time they were nearing Emmaus. They had almost made the 7-mile trip. At the end of their journey, Jesus acted as if he were going on. He's like, hey, you guys take it easy. I'm going to just keep on going down the road. Can you imagine? Imagine if they don't invite him in, how that story goes. I mean, there's no story. But listen to what happened. By the time they were near Emmaus, at the end of their journey, Jesus acted as if he were going on, but they begged him, stay the night with us, since it is getting late. Now this is a stranger. They don't know him. They don't know it's Jesus. It's a stranger. They begged him to stay. Stay the night with us. It's getting late. So he went home with them. As they sat down to eat, he took the bread and blessed it. Then he broke it and he gave it to them. And suddenly their eyes were opened and they recognized him. And at that moment he disappeared. That's terrible! I mean, they are in such despair. They're walking, they're sad. He's finally like, yeah, come hang out with us tonight. He finally gets to the table, he breaks the bread. Now, they weren't part of that group who shared in that Last Supper, so it wasn't like they had that kind of experience with the breaking of bread. Maybe they saw his nail-scarred hands. Maybe there was something recognizable, but whatever it was, as he broke the bread, their eyes were open, and for the first time they could see Jesus as he was. And then he's gone. Man. Here's a couple things I want to say about that part. Jesus was content to continue his journey. They begged him to stay. I think sometimes churches, religion, we try to convert by concussion, right? We try to make you see and believe the things that we believe to be true, and we force it on people. And people, they don't like that. What is it that we don't get about that? God doesn't force himself on people. He waits to be invited. And where he's invited, he makes his home. He will come in and break bread with them, and sup with them, and be with them. And that's really what we need to understand as we're moving through this journey. Listen, for all of the ways in which possibly over the course of your life, some pastor, preacher, priest, church has offended you, hurt you, done the full court press on you, made it feel like you had to do something you don't want to do, on behalf of all of them, I want to say I'm sorry. It's not the way. God comes to all of us when we open our hearts and our homes. And he wants to be with us. They begged him to stay. And so, at this point, what I just want you to know is, however it is that you've been banged up along the way, God understands that. And he understands your despair. And he understands that you're flagging in your faith, some of you these days. He's understanding that hope is a rare commodity. He understands that many of you, some of you are going through the motions. He just wants you in the midst of your darkness, in the midst of your trouble, to extend just enough faith to invite him to come in. And when you do, he will. Guaranteed. And so, as you look at the story and you listen to your own life, I want you just to understand that as he shared the scriptures and he broke the bread, there was this moment of illumination. There was this moment that they went from a place of misunderstanding to understanding, from cloudiness to clarity, and it happened in an instant. It happened just like that. Some of you who are sitting in gloom, you think it's never going to end. You think it's never going to end. I'm going to tell you, it's just a chapter in your story. Now, it might be a long chapter, but it's just a chapter. And the truth of the matter is, you get a say in how long the chapter is actually going to last. Because your response to the place that you are will directly determine how long you stay there. Our choices in life not only shape our character, but they determine our destinies. And so we need to be in a place where we're mindful that even when we're in a place that we least want to be, that we make the kind of choices that lead us to life. They begged him to come here. He was content to keep going. They begged him, and he stayed. Now, if the story ends there, I'm a little undone. Because finally they had hope again. And poof, he's gone. Just as quickly as he came, he left. I don't like that. I don't like that kind of story. And if it ended there, I wouldn't be all that happy. But there's a little bit left that I want to finish and share with you, and then there's one final place of application. So they said to each other, "Didn't our hearts burn within us as he talked with us on the road? How could we have been so stupid? We knew he was there. How did we not know?" And within the hour, they were on their way back to Jerusalem. And there they found the 11 disciples. It was nighttime. They had no energy. They were dragging their feet. They were totally demoralized. It's nighttime. They begged him to stay because a lot of times at night on a journey it could be very dangerous and you could be taken advantage of. But they're out on the road again. They're back towards Jerusalem. They can't wait. Why? They have to take now what they've seen, what they didn't believe that others had. Remember earlier in the story how others had told them about how they went and Jesus' body wasn't there? They didn't believe it. But now they had the experience, and they had to go tell their friends. So nighttime, they make their way back. 7 miles. I think this time it's a little bit more pep in their step. They're making their way. There's no more of this, slow and plodding. They're booking it, man. They got to tell their friends. Because it's good news. If Jesus can conquer death, what can't he conquer? Bad marriage, bad job, bad life, he can do it. And that's what he's offering. And so they are just booking it, man. They are trying to get back to Jerusalem to tell their friends. And within the hour, they were on their way back to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 disciples and the others who had gathered with them, who said, "The Lord has really risen." He appeared to Peter. Then the two from Emmaus told the story of how Jesus had appeared to them as they were walking along the road, and how they had recognized him as he was breaking the bread. And just as they were telling about it, Jesus himself was suddenly standing there among them. "Peace be with you," he said. He's back. I like this story. It's getting better now. He's there, he's gone, he's there again. He's all over the place. This is what I want to know when I'm struggling. He's not in a city some 7 miles from here. He's in Emmaus, he's in Jerusalem, he's in Ten Falls, he's everywhere. He's all over the place. There he is. Peace be with you. They're freaking out. They are freaking out. But the whole group was startled. They were frightened, thinking that they were seeing ghosts. Of course. This is what he asked them. This is great. "Why are you frightened?" "Look at you!" What? I mean, they're undone. They don't know what to do, what to say. It's a ghost. "Why are your hearts filled with doubt?" he said. "Look at my hands. Look at my feet. You can see that it's really me. Touch me and make sure that I'm not a ghost, because ghosts don't have bodies, as you see that I do." And he spoke, and he showed them his hands and his feet. The end of their journey represents the beginning of their journey. Right? It was all gone. It was all done. All hope was lost. And then this stranger comes up alongside him. And slowly, as the scriptures are opened, as the bread is broken, he begins to reveal himself. And their eyes are opened, and they know that new life is possible. Because not even the grave can hold him. And if the grave can't hold him, then nothing can. And so, when we look at and we think about the Christian faith, we have to understand this. The Christian faith isn't primarily about making bad people good. We're all both. Be quite honest. The Christian faith is primarily about making dead people come alive. New life, new hope, new joy, new peace, new beginnings. That is what the Christian faith is about. And so, as we come to the close of the time of my sharing of the scriptures this morning, and just before we take communion, here's what I want you to know. In whatever state you may find yourself in these days, I want you to know that God is closer to you than you could have imagined possible. You've prayed a lot of prayers, many of you, and most of those prayers seem like they have gone unheard. They have not. God is bringing you to a place where when you open yourself and you invite Him to join you on your journey, you will find that your journey takes on an entirely different direction, an entirely different course. Because this isn't just fable. It's not just history. This is real stuff. And as real as He was to the two on the road to Emmaus, He is to people like you and me. And 2 billion plus people all over the world. And today celebrating this singular truth that has the capacity to begin to make all things new. If you find yourself in a place this morning where you are needing for something in your life to be made new, then I would recommend to you the Messiah, Jesus Christ. I would recommend to you the invitation that you make for Him to help open your eyes, for you to invite Him in. We're going to break bread in just a moment, and I'm going to pray that as we break bread, He would open your eyes to your need for Him. Because truthfully, there's not anyone in this building who doesn't need His grace, who doesn't need His touch, who doesn't need the hope that He offers, the power that He offers, the courage to face situations that would otherwise render us useless and fearful. The resurrection is a very real possibility. It's one that I think this morning, as you continue your journey, that you should consider. By the way, when I was young, I was taught that one makes a commitment to Christ, and then that seals the deal. And then you spend the rest of your life just kind of trying to work out your salvation. But that there was this one place that conversion happened, and then you just sort of rode that. And I would say to you today, I don't believe that anymore. I think because of who we are and how we're made, that we need to be reconverted daily. I think that there are things that we forget that are deeply important to us, and when we forget them, it does great harm to us. I am so capable of forgetting such essential truths on a daily basis, it is astounding. And I know with the shaking of some of your heads that you are too. And so what I'm saying is, I want to invite you not only to know the person of Jesus Christ, but to follow Him and to make a room for Him in your life. I'm not inviting you to make a one-time decision where you get your ticket to heaven. That's not the deal. I'm inviting you to a new way of life. One where when Christ is leading you, you will understand the dynamic of what it means to know peace in your life. And joy in circumstances that you couldn't have imagined possibly having a heart filled with joy when your life is as it is. So I know you want hope, and I know you want peace, and I know you want joy, and I know you want to feel loved. It's just you resist the death part. But in order for resurrection to happen, we have to let go of some of the things that are actually killing us and die to them so that we can know it and life to it. And so I hope you will. Now, normally with communion, we have people who come to the front, and it's usually bread in a cup, and you'll take and you'll dip. But there's so many chairs that we put in here this morning that we're not going to have you come to the communion table. Communion's going to come to you. And so I'm going to explain it just a little bit differently because the logistics will be a little different. The bread is normally from Panera. It is not this morning. It is matzah. Unleavened bread, the kind that Jesus would have shared with His disciples. And when it comes to you, the bread is going to be passed out. There are going to be people on both sides of the rows. They're going to pass out the bread first. And as it comes to you, the reason that we didn't have the bread, which is normally always broken, is because we wanted you to take and break off a piece, reminiscent of when they broke the bread, their eyes were open. We wanted you to participate in the breaking of the bread. So when it comes your way, if you choose to, we invite you to break off a piece. Now, if you're in a place where you're not yet sure that you want to invite Christ into this place, then it is no shame, and I do not want you to be embarrassed or feel any pressure. I just want you to pass the plate to the person beside you. And it will move on. Because we do not want you to make any decision that regards your faith or any kind of commitment and reception of Jesus Christ if it's not something you want to do. It doesn't work. But if it's the desire of your heart, I'm going to have Frank put the prayer back up, the same prayer that we prayed at the beginning. And if that's the desire of your heart and you want to pray that prayer, please do so. And as the plate passes, you'll break off a piece of the bread. Now, don't eat the bread right away. Okay? Because the cups will then be passed. Now, as the cup is passed, what I would like for you to do, because we're wearing nice clothes today, and it could easily stain the nice clothes that you're wearing, we wouldn't want that to happen. I want you, when it hits your robe, to stand, bread in one hand, cups being passed, and just carefully take your piece of bread and dip it, eat, and then carefully pass it to the person beside you. Okay? Simple enough? When it has gone to the end, you'll sit down. The next row will stand. Okay? Again, if you're not in a place where you're wanting to do this, just pass it. Okay? It's your best, most authentic response if it doesn't match your heart. Okay? So, I'm going to pray over this, and here's what I'm going to pray. That as we break the bread, your eyes would be open in a new way to God's presence here with you. Because some of you have been praying prayers that feel like they're just bouncing off the wall. Some of you feel deep absence from God. And some of you need to be reminded that He's actually closer than you think. That He's actually with you. That He's actually for you. That He actually wants to do a resurrection in your life, in your marriage, in your family, with your job, with your health. He actually wants to do that. And so, I'm going to pray, and then we'll pass the elements and you share. I think the team is going to come. And as we're doing that, they're going to play a song quietly as we receive it. So let me pray. Father, we thank you this day for the power of the resurrection. We celebrate that truth as it happened with your Son, but as it can happen with us too. And I pray that as we remember Christ, sharing the elements, the broken body and the shed blood, that as we break the bread, our eyes would be open. And that in a new way, you would renew our faith, restore our hope, and that our hearts would be burning because your presence is so near to us. That's my prayer today. I pray this in the name of the risen one, Jesus Christ, who is our Lord.